Welcome back for Section 2 of Module 8 on air transportation, where we're going to look at the structure of the U.S. air import market, essentially who the players are and what they do. Let's start off with the first two slides that are really a summary of what we saw in the previous section on how the air transportation market has been segmented in the United States. The U.S. air import industry is comprised of different service providers. Let's summarize that market segmentation that we spoke of just a moment ago. Let's begin with cargo airlines. These are air carriers that run the assets themselves, that offer cargo-only flights on a scheduled basis to or from specified origin and destination airports. No passengers, just cargo. Passenger airlines also play a big role in the air cargo industry, but these are air carriers whose main business is the transport of passengers, but that also offer cargo services on a much more limited basis. But passenger flights, many of them, if not most or all of them, do offer cargo services. We'll be talking more and more about the differences between moving freight on an all-cargo airline versus a passenger airline in upcoming sections. Integrators, we mentioned briefly. These are air carriers that offer origin transportation, main mode of transport, air freight of course, customs clearance and domestic delivery as part of an integrated service portfolio. That's why the UPSs, the DHLs, the FedExes, they're called integrators. They will pick up at a vendor overseas with their own equipment, take it to their air cargo operation, put it on their own flights and aircraft. They all offer customs clearance, and they'll deliver in a branded truck as well. That's what integrators do because they offer an integrated service. Lastly, we spoke of aircraft leasing and charter companies. These are firms that lease aircraft to airlines and or offer charter service to forwarders and importers. Leasing is different than chartering. Any airline can lease an aircraft from a leasing company and operate it under its own brand, etc. Charters are different. Essentially, a charter is renting the use of an aircraft for a specific flight. Freight forwarders can do that. Importers can do that too. And as we said, for a quick trade tip, examples of integrators, UPS, FedEx, DHL are the big three. Some others moving away from the actual aircraft themselves, we have common carriers. These are trucking companies that support air imports through pickup and transport of cargo to and from airlines. Sometimes when a freight forwarder is delivering cargo at origin to an airline, they'll either use their own trucks or a common carrier, a trucker, to do that. When goods arrive in the United States, merchandise has to be moved as well. Common carriers will do that. Short haul common carriers, basically. Line haul carriers are a little bit different. These are trucking companies that provide long haul transport of import cargo from an airport to a given destination. Sometimes bonded, sometimes not. Common carriers, although they can do long haul, typically for air freight, a little more short haul oriented, whereas the line haul carriers will move freight longer distances. As a trade tip, we can say that truckers in the U.S. that are transporting imported goods that have not cleared through customs must do so as a bonded carrier. And that means that the trucker has special permissions from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to move goods physically in the United States that have not entered into the commerce of the United States. An example of that might be cargo coming in from Asia into LA that is then trucked without clearing customs all the way to Miami for subsequent re-export into Latin America. That would require a bonded carrier. Some others, more on the service side of things, we have GSAs, as they're called, a general sales agent. These are companies that represent and or contract for space or rate agreements with airlines and offer that space to other freight forwarders. A wholesale model, if you will. GSAs aren't as predominant as they used to be, but it's not unusual to see general sales agents in markets like Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, where markets are still emerging. Of course, last one on this slide, very important for us, air freight forwarders. These are companies that contract for space and rate agreements with airlines and offer that space on a consolidated basis to U.S. importers. If you're not familiar with how consolidation works in air freight, that's why we're here. Don't worry too much about that. If you're not, we will go into agonizing detail on what freight consolidation means in the air freight space. Master loaders. This is a term you see mostly in Asia, sometimes confused with a GSA, but master loaders are a little bit more big time than GSAs. Master loaders are air freight forwarders at origin that contract for large, what are sometimes referred to as block space agreements, BSAs, with cargo airlines, who then resell space in the wholesale market to other freight forwarders. These are big freight forwarders that buy blocks of space on aircraft. That's why they're called block space agreements. As we said, master loaders are found predominantly in the Asia to Europe and Asia to US markets. Here's an important trade tip. When contracting for air inbound services, U.S. importers should determine if the freight forwarder they're working with has their own agreements with airlines or works with master loaders. That is an important distinction to make, based mainly on the fact whether the freight forwarder has enough pull, enough influence with the airline to make sure that their customer's cargo is moving in a timely and complete fashion. Obviously, as importers, that's important to us. We mentioned bonded carriers briefly. Let's go into a little bit more detail here. Bonded carriers are trucking companies that are licensed by U.S. Customs and Border Protection to move cargo in bond from a specific U.S. pickup location to a specific destination within the U.S. Goods are physically in the country. They haven't cleared through customs. They haven't entered into the commerce of the United States. Truckers can move freight around like that. A flight might come in from London into Chicago and then be trucked down to Cincinnati without clearing customs. A bonded carrier would have to do that. Other examples in our sub-bullets: withdrawal and delivery of goods removed from a foreign trade zone. That's a little outside of our scope, but certainly an example. And then pickup of foreign origin cargo moving in transit through the U.S. for delivery to a port or airport of export. That was the Asia to Los Angeles, truck down to Miami example we spoke of a few minutes ago. Last in this section, certified cargo screening providers. These are TSA-approved facilities that screen cargo prior to tendering to a passenger airline. Again, a little bit out of our scope, but certainly worth mentioning. You have your DG consultants, pretty important for air freight. Dangerous goods consultants. These are persons that are certified in the packaging, labeling, and shipping of dangerous goods. Very important, actually, for air freight. And then packing and crating companies. These are the firms that offer specialty packaging and crating services to both exporters and importers. That will wrap up section 2. Hopefully a solid representation of who the players are in the U.S. air import market. As we move forward, we'll talk about some of the drivers of the U.S. air import market structure.